Cynthia's footsteps crunched on the sandy path as she glanced around, the vast desert stretching endlessly under the setting sun. Her heart fluttered with excitement, anticipating the party Sandra had promised. She adjusted her backpack, feeling the weight of the snacks and drinks she had packed. Sandra's voice echoed in her mind. "It's going to be the best party ever, Cynthia. Just follow the trail and you'll find us. We're setting up everything right now." Cynthia trusted Sandra. She always had. They had been friends since childhood, their bond seemingly unbreakable. But as high school progressed, Sandra's jealousy grew. She masked it well, hiding behind sweet smiles and friendly gestures, but the bitterness festered beneath the surface. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the temperature plummeted. Cynthia shivered, pulling her jacket tighter. She glanced at her watch. 8:30 p.m. The party was supposed to start at 8. Where was everyone? "Hello?" Cynthia called out, her voice echoing eerily in the empty desert. "Sandra? Is anyone here?" Silence. A chill ran down her spine, and not just from the cold. She took out her phone. No signal. Panic started to creep in, but she pushed it aside. Sandra wouldn't lie to her. Would she? Minutes turned into hours. The cold became unbearable, her breath visible in the moonlight. Cynthia's mind raced, replaying every interaction with Sandra over the past few weeks. The little comments, the subtle digs, the way Sandra's eyes would darken when Cynthia's boyfriend, Jake, paid her attention. "Oh no," Cynthia whispered, the realization hitting her hard. This was a setup. There was no party. Sandra had lured her out here to humiliate her, to make her suffer. Desperation clawed at her as she started walking, trying to find her way back. The desert was a maze of dunes and shadows, every direction looking the same. Her throat was dry, her limbs aching from the cold and exertion. Hours passed. Cynthia's hope dwindled with each step. She stumbled, falling to her knees, the sharp pain shooting up her legs. Tears streamed down her face, freezing on her cheeks. She called out again, her voice hoarse and broken. "Sandra, Jake, anyone, help me." But no one came. As the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, Cynthia's strength gave out. She collapsed, her body too exhausted to move. The cold seeped into her bones, her vision blurring. Her last thought was of Jake, wondering if he would miss her, if he would ever know what happened. And then, darkness. Weeks later, the town buzzed with the news of Cynthia's disappearance. Sandra played the role of the concerned friend perfectly, shedding crocodile tears and organizing search parties. But deep down, she relished the attention, the whispers of sympathy. Until one night, Sandra was driving home late from a party, the road deserted. Her headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the empty path ahead. She hummed to herself, a satisfied smile on her lips. But then she saw it, a figure standing by the side of the road, pale and motionless. Cynthia. Sandra's heart pounded in her chest, fear gripping her. She blinked, and the figure was gone. "Just my imagination," Sandra muttered, trying to calm herself. But as she drove on, she saw Cynthia again, and again, always just out of reach, always watching. Sandra's nights became sleepless, haunted by Cynthia's ghostly presence. She could feel the cold touch of Cynthia's fingers, hear the whispers of betrayal. Her friends noticed her change, the way her once vibrant personality faded into a shell of paranoia and fear. One by one, they too started seeing Cynthia. At first it was just glimpses, but then she appeared more frequently, her presence a constant reminder of their betrayal. Years passed, and the legend of Cynthia's ghost became a cautionary tale in the town. People avoided the desert at night, fearing her wrath, and those who dared to venture out never returned. Sandra's life crumbled. Her popularity vanished, her friends abandoning her as the guilt and fear consumed her. She became a recluse, trapped in a never-ending nightmare. And in the quiet, desolate desert, Cynthia's spirit lingered, seeking justice, ensuring no one would ever forget the betrayal that led to her untimely death. Clark tightened his grip on his phone, the screen illuminating his anxious face as he began his nightly vlog. "Hey guys, it's your boy Clark, back with another night shift at the creepiest mall in town. You know the drill. We're here to see if those ghost stories are true." He took a swig from his flask, the burn of the liquor steadying his nerves. The mall was deathly quiet, the only sound the echo of his footsteps. He'd taken this job for the money. Needed it, really. A brand new luxury sports car wasn't going to buy itself. Clark's voice wavered as he walked through the deserted corridors. This place, it gives me the creeps, man. But hey, a job's a job, right? Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from one of the unfinished sections of the mall. Clark froze, his heart pounding. Did you guys hear that? I'm not alone in here. His phone's camera caught a fleeting shadow darting past. Okay, this is getting too real. He approached the area where the noise came from, his breath shallow. Who's there? His voice barely more than a whisper. A playful chuckle echoed through the space, and Clark spun around, phone shaking in his hand. Show yourself, he demanded, trying to keep his fear at bay. A translucent figure materialized in front of him, a construction worker, tools still in hand. Boo, the ghost said with a grin. Clark stumbled back, nearly dropping his phone. Holy, you're real. The ghost floated closer, still grinning. As if on cue, the temperature dropped, and a menacing presence filled the room. Another presence emerged from the shadows, his expression dark and evil, and he whispered, You're trespassing. Clark's eyes widened as he backed away. I'm just doing my job, man. I don't want any trouble. The evil entity advanced, a sinister smile on his lips. Too late for that. The next few hours were a blur of terror for Clark, doors slamming, lights flickering, and whispers that seemed to come from everywhere. He documented everything, his fear palpable in each video clip. His viewers would love this, but he wasn't sure he'd survive the night to post it. In a moment of rare quiet, Clark found himself hiding in a storage room, taking frantic gulps from his flask. Why did I take this job? He muttered to himself. I need the money, but this is insane. His phone buzzed with a new message notification. It was from his girlfriend, asking if he'd made enough for the down payment on the car yet. Clark laughed bitterly. Almost there, babe. Just a few more nights. As the ghost's antics grew more intense, Clark realized that his dream of a luxury sports car wasn't worth his sanity or his life. But quitting wasn't an option. He was trapped in a nightmare of his own making, and the only way out was to endure it. The dawn finally broke, and the ghosts retreated to their hidden corners of the mall. Clark, exhausted and shaken, made his way to the exit. He looked back one last time, the eerie silence mocking him. Is some me time tomorrow? He called out, his voice hollow. A faint, playful laugh echoed back. We'll be waiting. As Clark stepped into the morning light, he knew the haunted mall had claimed another victim note in death, but in spirit. And he had only himself to blame. There was a snowstorm covering the mountain road that leads to the city. A truck driver was speeding towards his home because his wife was about to give birth to his first child. The man was filled with joy and excitement to bring home a teddy bear for his baby and an engagement ring for his wife. Due to the anxiety of the moment, when he was about to make a dangerous curve, he lost control and hit a rock wall. The driver got out of the truck, all stunned and scared, looking at himself, knowing he was okay, and began to wait for somebody passing by to ask for help to make it to the city. But time passed by, and not a single soul crossed those roads. The man, feeling tired, fell asleep, and when he woke up, he was shocked. It was dark. He couldn't understand what was going on. So he decided to start walking, and he walked and walked for a long distance. He knew that he was getting closer to the city, but nevertheless, when he noticed, he was back at the same place of the accident. 3 days after they found the wrecked truck, but not the driver. Nobody ever knew anything about him. That is, until a couple of years later, a young truck driver pulled off the road to help a man that was waving his hands in a sign for help. Hello, buddy, my name's Pete Carson. I wrecked my truck and I need your help, please. My wife is about to have our first child and I don't know for how long I'm going to be here. I can't just leave the truck here. I've got to wait for assistance. Could you please give this gift to my wife and let her know that I'll be home soon? Sorry I couldn't be there in time. Yes, sir, I will, I promise, answered the young truck driver. Just tell me where your wife lives. The man gave him a piece of paper with the address and the name of his wife. When they were saying goodbye, the young man felt a chill down his spine as he was shaking his hand. The man was cold as a dead person. The young man didn't think anything about it, went back to his truck, and headed to the city. The next day he went looking for the woman at the address that was on the piece of paper, but she wasn't living there anymore. Without giving up because of the promise he made, he started asking the neighbors about the woman that used to live there. No one knew anything except an old lady from across the street, and she gave him directions to her house. When he arrived, he knocked on the door and waited for somebody to answer. "Yes, young man. How can I help you?" asked the woman. "Excuse me, ma'am. Does Pete Carson's wife live here?" "It's me," she answered. "What can I do for you?" "Last night on the mountain road to the city, your husband asked me to bring these gifts to you because he got into an accident." "OMG. This can't be," she exclaimed as she interrupted him. "My husband passed away 5 years ago." The young man was shaking in fear. He gave the teddy bear and the ring to the woman who was crying inconsolably, and then he left, all scared. As soon as he got home and closed the door, there he was in front of him, the truck driver from the road. Filled with fear, he tried to move but felt a strange force running through his body. "Thank you, young man," said the dead man with a hollow voice as he was fading away. The young man could hear his heartbeat, and it took him a while to mentally recover from that. Sometime after, chatting with some friends, he found out that the same man that he helped on the road had appeared to other truck drivers, and none of them fulfilled the dead man's favor. And that's why they all crashed and died. Jack's painted smile didn't fool anyone. The children rarely laughed anymore, and the adults whispered behind his back. He shuffled around the circus grounds, his oversized shoes dragging in the dirt, the weight of his loneliness pressing down on him. It had been years since he felt anything other than contempt from his fellow performers and Mr. Sean's relentless mockery. The circus traveled from town to town, leaving behind a trail of unease. Jack's anger simmered beneath the surface, a constant presence that grew with each insult, each act of cruelty he inflicted on the animals. Birds were his favorite targets. Their fragile bodies and helplessness offered a sick satisfaction that temporarily eased his pain. One evening, as the circus set up in yet another small town, Jack wandered into the animal tent. The birds chirped nervously in their cages, sensing his approach. He reached into one of the cages and grabbed a small sparrow, its wings fluttering desperately. With a twisted grin, he tightened his grip. "Jack, what are you doing?" a voice called from behind. Jack turned to see Mr. Sean, his face twisted in a sneer. "Just having a bit of fun," Jack replied, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Fun, huh? You're pathetic," Mr. Sean spat. "You think anyone likes you? You're nothing but a joke." Jack's hands trembled with rage. He wanted to scream, to lash out, but he knew it would only make things worse. Instead, he released the bird, watching it flutter away, and stormed out of the tent. That night, the nightmares returned. He dreamt of his co-workers, their faces twisted in malicious glee as they cornered him. He felt their hands on him, felt the ropes tightening around his neck. He woke up in a cold sweat, his heart pounding. The next day, the tension in the circus was palpable. The performers avoided Jack, whispering among themselves. Mr. Sean's taunts grew crueler, pushing Jack closer to the edge. As the days passed, Jack's frustration turned to desperation. He started hearing whispers, seeing shadows that seemed to follow him. The birds in their cages watched him with accusing eyes. He tried to ignore them, but their presence gnawed at his sanity. One fateful night, after a particularly brutal encounter with Mr. Sean, Jack snapped. He stormed into the animal tent, his mind clouded with rage. He grabbed a bird, its panic chirps filling the tent. He squeezed tighter and tighter until the chirp stopped. In that moment, something shifted. The air grew cold, and the shadows seemed to close in around him. Jack felt a sharp pain in his chest, and he collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath. As he lay there, his vision fading, he cursed the circus and everyone in it. The following morning, the circus woke to a grim discovery. Jack's lifeless body lay in the animal tent, a twisted grin frozen on his face. The performers whispered of his final words, of the curse he placed on the circus. Over time, strange things began to happen. The animals grew restless, the performers fell ill, and the circus's popularity dwindled. Mr. Sean's oppressive reign faltered as the circus spiraled into chaos. In the end, the circus closed its doors, unable to escape the shadow of Jack's curse. The tents were abandoned, left to rot in the fields. But the whispers persisted, and those who ventured too close claimed to hear the faint sound of a clown's laughter echoing through the night. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the quiet suburban street. Inside a modest two-story house, Mia, a 13-year-old girl with a heart full of innocence and a mind brimming with imagination, settled into her favorite armchair with a book. Her two cats, Luna and Shadow, lounged nearby, purring softly. The house was cozy, with warm wooden floors and family photos adorning the walls, but as night approached, a sense of unease began to creep in. Mia's parents had just left for their convenience store a few blocks away. "Remember, Mia," her mom had said, "don't open the door to anyone, okay?" Mia had nodded, used to their protective nature. She knew the rules well, but often found them stifling. She tried to lose herself in her book, but Luna's sudden hiss pulled her back to reality. The cat stood at the front door, fur puffed up and eyes wide with alarm. Shadow joined Luna, mirroring her agitation. Mia put down her book, puzzled. "What's wrong, Luna? Why are you hissing?" Mia asked, walking over to her cats. They never acted this way unless something was really wrong. Before she could ponder further, a sudden knock echoed through the house, making Mia jump. She hesitated, recalling her parents' warning. But curiosity got the better of her. Who could it be at this hour? She approached the door cautiously, peeking through the peephole. Her heart skipped a beat. Standing there was a familiar face, her cousin, who had died 2 years ago. Mia's confusion turned to joy. "It's me, your cousin. Can I come in?" The figure outside said, his voice eerily calm. Mia, with a mixture of excitement and disbelief, unlocked the door and opened it wide. "Come in," Mia said, stepping aside to let her cousin enter. As the figure crossed the threshold, Luna and Shadow sprang into action, hissing ferociously and positioning themselves between Mia and the visitor. Their eyes glowed with an intensity Mia had never seen before. "What's gotten into you two?" She scolded, trying to push the cats away, but they wouldn't budge. The air around her felt thick and oppressive, a stark contrast to the joy she felt moments ago. Her cousin smiled, but there was something off about it. His eyes didn't hold the warmth she remembered. Instead, they seemed empty, almost lifeless. "It's okay, Mia. I'm here to see you," he said, stepping forward. The cats' hissing grew louder, their bodies tense and ready to pounce. They formed a tight barrier, their claws out, fur standing on end. Mia's confusion turned to fear. Something was terribly wrong. "Why are you here?" Mia asked, her voice trembling. You died. How can you be here?" The figure's smile widened, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I missed you, Mia. Don't you miss me too?" His voice was soothing, but it sent chills down her spine. Luna and Shadow moved in perfect unison, blocking every attempt the figure made to get closer to Mia. They were determined to protect her, their instincts screaming danger. "Get out." Mia finally found her voice, her fear turning to anger. "You're not my cousin. Leave us alone." The figure's expression darkened, and the air grew colder. "You can't stop me, Mia. I'm here to stay," he said, taking another step forward. But the cats wouldn't relent. They lunged at the figure, their claws swiping through the air. To Mia's shock, the figure recoiled, a look of pain crossing his face. The barrier the cats formed seemed to have a tangible effect on him. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Mia backed away, her heart pounding in her chest. She needed to get help, but the phone was in the other room, and she didn't want to leave the cats alone with this malevolent presence. The struggle continued, the air thick with tension in the oppressive presence of the dark entity. Luna and Shadow held their ground, their fierce loyalty and protective instincts shining through. Mia, now fully aware of the danger, watched in terror and awe as her beloved pets fought to keep the evil at bay. Suddenly the front door burst open, and Mia's parents rushed in, their faces pale with fear. "Mia," her mom called out, rushing to her side. "Are you okay?" Mia, tears streaming down her face, nodded. "Mom, Dad, it's him." "My cousin." "But the cats, they're protecting me." Her parents exchanged a horrified glance. "Sweetheart," her dad said gently, "your cousin died 2 years ago. This isn't him." Mia's mind raced, trying to process the revelation. She looked at the figure again, now writhing and struggling against the cat's barrier. The truth hit her like a punch to the gut. This wasn't her cousin. It was something else, something dark and malevolent. Her mom turned to her, eyes wide with urgency. "We need to get out of here. Now." As they moved to leave, Luna and Shadow continued their relentless defense, giving the family the precious moments they needed to escape. They fled the house, running to the safety of a neighbor's home. The neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, greeted them with a worried expression. "I saw a dark figure at your door. I came to warn you, but it was too late." Mia's parents thanked her, their relief palpable. They turned to Mia, who was still shaking from the ordeal. "Are you sure you're okay?" her dad asked, his voice filled with concern. Mia nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "The cats. They saved me." Later that night, as the family huddled together, Mia's parents explained the neighbor's warning about the dark entity. Mia, still trying to make sense of everything, looked at her parents with wide eyes. "Why didn't I see it? It looked just like him." Her mom hugged her tightly. "Sometimes evil disguises itself in familiar faces, but your cats saw through it. They knew." As they sat together, the weight of the evening's events settled over them. They were safe, thanks to Luna and Shadow, but the knowledge that such darkness could infiltrate their lives left a lingering unease. The family held each other close, grateful for their feline guardians and the fierce love that had protected Mia from the shadows. The house, once warm and inviting, now held an air of caution. But with Luna and Shadow by her side, Mia knew she was never truly alone.